Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton says she is pleased the president is taking action on gun control, but the Republican presidential candidates have already criticized the president's plan this week. Both Senator Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio said the first thing they would do in office would be to undo President Obama's executive actions.
Barack Obama is obsessed with undermining the Second Amendment, an important protection that our Constitution recognizes and defends for us. And he's looking for any way possible to undermine it. He's been doing this forever. He's going to do nothing to prevent violence or crimes.
I've said we need comprehensive background checks. We need to close the gun show loophole, close the online loophole, close what's called the Charleston loophole, end the blanket immunity from liability that gun makers and sellers have. And for heaven's sakes, prohibit anyone on the no-fly list from buying a gun. If you are too dangerous to fly, you are too dangerous to buy a gun. There's a lot at stake. You know, President may sign these executive orders on guns. They can be undone the first day by a Republican president.
The first thing I intend to do is to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. You know, today, President Obama is talking about issuing new unconstitutional executive orders, talking about our right to keep and bear arms. Well, he may have a phone and he may have a pen, but if you live by the pen, you die by the pen, and my pen has got an eraser.
Caitlin Huey-Burns from Real Clear Politics is here on the set. She joins us again to talk about all this. Hey there.
Hi, good to see you.
So listen, you just heard Senator Cruz there talking about that, and it sounds like he's playing to the crowd. He's talking about President Obama, unconstitutional efforts to undermine the Second Amendment, when the president seems to be proposing to close this loophole that exists on the laws, on the books. We're seeing a lot of that on the campaign trail.
Oh, sure. And the president hinted that he expected that kind of thing. Republicans have been pushing back against this executive order before it was even announced today. As we saw in the earlier bites, Ted Cruz to Jeb Bush to Marco Rubio, all pushing back on the legality of it, the policy of it. And so you'll certainly see this expand more on the campaign trail. And the issue that Republicans have with the executive order on this, but also it started with the executive order on immigration specifically. Right. And remember, then Speaker John Boehner of the House sued over that executive order. So I think we're going to see more of that to come on this issue on guns.
Yeah, the president tried to get that immigration executive order put in, and that's been stuck. It hasn't moved at all. I think a lot of people are expecting that a lot of what he's just proposed today is also going to be stuck in Congress. Now, the question I think a lot of people are going to have as we go into this election season is how much play this will get, especially as we get closer to Iowa. Clearly a state like Iowa, where there are a lot of gun owners, people feel any threat to the Second Amendment is one that they don't support, but this is going to be something that's going to burn up the campaign trail.
And this is a key issue in the Republican primary at this point. So you mentioned Iowa, but we also have a slew of southern states who vote in unison on March 1st. In that primary, that's where Ted Cruz is trying to really contend, and a variety of other candidates as well. So I think we'll see this continue in the way that they have been talking about it. So it certainly, I think, can be a mobilizing force for those certain Republicans that these candidates are trying to turn out to come to the caucus in a cold night in February, as we like to say, and also to continue interest throughout the primary season.
How do these candidates, in the face of parents like Mark Barden, who lost his son Daniel in Sandy Hook, in the face of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who was nearly assassinated back in 2011 in Tucson, how do they, when you talk to them, how are they able to make that case, even to their constituents, that there's some common sense approaches that the president is laying out here do not make sense?
Well, Republicans will say that something needs to be done, but they don't think that it needs to come come in the form of restrictions, as they see it, on gun holders or gun purchasers and people who own guns. What they want to tackle is the mental health aspect of this. And after the San Bernardino shooting, shootings, because they were a terrorist incident, that's what they focused on, was ISIS. We saw the spread of terrorism globally, and that's what was the focus there. So you'll see them try to talk about other issues related to these violent crimes.
Now, the president, to that point, Caitlin, said that he intends to try to increase, to strengthen the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of support that goes into helping those people that have mental issues. And he asked the other side to put their money where their mouth is. Is this something that you see that they will also find polarizing, given that they've talked about it so much?
They have talked about it a lot, but we really haven't seen much movement. And again, I do think if there are proposals that come forward on mental health, supporters of gun restrictions will want it to be part of a package that implements some of the reforms that the president has talked about. So I think it's a really difficult issue for this Congress. This Congress is especially polarized. So I think, as the president mentioned today, he's not going to see these changes in his presidency in this Congress.
Let's talk about the Democrats now. I mean, clearly we've just been talking about why the Republicans find it so difficult to come to the table when so many, at least 50% in some cases of Americans, believe that there should be some kind of changes. As Jan Crawford pointed out, the polling that is done is very, very broad. But when you ask Americans about some specific issues, they do want to see some change. But as far as the Democrats are concerned, do they have a tin ear when it comes to what a lot of people are saying about the Second Amendment, how strongly they feel about it?
Well, that's why they are focused on the issue of background checks, because they know it draws bipartisan support. And so that's been the focus of the president, but also the focus, as we heard earlier, from Hillary Clinton. On the Democratic side, this is not an issue that divides the party really in any way right now. We've seen a progression, actually, from 2008 to now. Democrats are firmly supportive of the president's executive actions. And Hillary Clinton reminding voters that those could be gone under a Republican president. So you'll certainly see this continue on in the general election.